All right, welcome to the next of the 67 steps. These are the 67 guidelines, principles, rules, patterns, frameworks that you want to use to get to get whatever it is you're looking for in life, to find the good life, as I call it. So today, the principle we're going to talk about is, I've called it sculpture versus the lottery and the anthropic media bias, eliminating biases on success's exponential time frame. So, big mouthful of words. Let me start by saying, I was born in LA, grew up in San Diego, and grew up near the ocean. My grandma loved to swim in the ocean. I was raised by my mom and grandma, and my mom loved to swim, so I was always at the beach. And what's the biggest fear anybody has, really, especially when you're a little kid? If you've ever seen the movie Jaws, it's, sharks. You're like out in the water, you're worried about something biting your, little teeny piece of seaweed comes by, you're like, jump. And part of that is simply, when that movie, by the way, Jaws, came out, Steven Spielberg, I think he spoke up about this because it was an unintended consequence of that movie that kind of, not animosity, I'm not sure what the word you want to use, but people became very biased towards sharks and forgot that sharks are part of a balanced equilibrium in the ocean, right? And so the truth is, and this is a crazy stat that I read, that you have a better chance of walking down the street or being at home and a piece of an airplane falling and hitting you on the head than you do being killed by a shark in the ocean. So the reason nobody ever talks about getting hit on the head by a piece of metal from an airplane, which happens, believe it or not often, but fairly often in the world, is that the media never covers that because it's not a good story, right? So the news, journalism, magazines, TV, it's all skewed towards ratings. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I'm not a big fan of the media in many ways because they think they're doing this great service to society. If you've ever seen that, I think it was Showtime or HBO did this newsroom thing where it's all about the news and these news anchors and how, quote unquote, they're righteously searching after exposing the truth. And I'm sure there's many good journalists and many good news TV programs. I myself don't like to watch the news. It's my advice to you. Take a break from the news. I like what Will Durant says. We focus much too much on the last 24 hours and not the last 6,000 years. So the time you used to spend watching the news, better, in my opinion, to read history. Occasionally look at the news, but all the stuff you need to know, you're going to find out anyway. Someone's going to tell you. So going back to this media bias, the shark versus a piece of metal hitting you on the head, that's just a microcosm of many areas in our life, and the values and outlooks that we have pertaining to success, same way. They are skewed, and there's a technical term for that. It's called media bias. You can Google it. It's a logical fallacy that basically says we tend to think something is true if we hear it more often, or in the case of the modern world, if it's splashed all across the news, across newspapers, across magazines. Give you another example. What do you hear are the major problems in the world? Maybe if you ask somebody, I've seen a survey what people list. If they could solve any world problem, what would it be? People say things like homelessness. People say, domestic violence, poverty. There's a long list. Now, all of those things are worthy causes. But do you want to know some of the things that are probably most likely to affect us as a civilization? One of them is erosion of soil, meaning, the top part of the soil has most of the nutrients. So all the food that keeps us alive and keeps the ecosystem going, plants, animals, us being one of them, is predicated on there being enough of this topsoil. And in places like the United States, which had tremendously fertile soil, just 10 feet deep of this black fertile soil, it's been washed away through bad farming practices right into the Mississippi River, into the ocean, never to be seen again. You can never get it back. It takes like, naturally, it takes 1,000 years to put 1 inch of soil back. So there are some ways you can get it back, but you never hear this in the news. Nobody's talking about the fact that when people went to Omaha, Nebraska 200 years ago, when they would dig their basements, there was 10 feet of topsoil, and now there's 2 feet left. Because I will tell you this, once again, when that day happens, when there's not enough fertile soil, we're not going to be able to grow plants to feed animals and feed ourselves, and to grow the milk, meat, cheese, vegetables, everything, chicken, grain that that our lives depend on. But the news isn't going to cover that. Why? Because it's not sexy. It's not going to bring them ratings. So they talk about things that bring them ratings, whether or not they're important. Media bias. So what's this have to do with you? Well, because if you're listening to this, you were born in the age of quote unquote media. This has a huge effect on how you subconsciously understand the timeline and the sequence of events that are going to happen before you're successful. So WhatsApp, those two guys started WhatsApp. Brian Acton, I think, was one of his names. Sold it for $19 billion. Bill Gates, billionaire, one of the richest men in the world. Warren Buffett. Now, Bill Gates said, from age 20 to age 30, I never took a day off, not even one. He started at 12. But was the news reporting on Bill Gates in a cubicle at 21 working away? No. All we hear is the ending story, right? We hear this story where, he has a 85-room house or whatever. He has some crazy house. That's the story you and I hear. So subconsciously, whether you know it or not, we begin to formulate that timeline for ourselves. We're like, okay, we're going to have this 85-room house, or we're going to have this amazing body, or we're going to have this. The news doesn't put on the cover people on their progress. Magazines doesn't put on their progress. They just show you people in perfect shape. They don't show you that Arnold Schwarzenegger started at 14, that he worked out 6 hours a day for a decade before he was even, or whatever, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. There's no story. There's very few stories. Occasionally the media will make a biography type movie, and they'll tell you the story, but very rarely. You and I, for ratings purposes, have been bombarded from the earliest age to understand that success is basically something that happens this way. You're sitting at home, you talk to a friend, you're like, I don't like watching commercials on my TV, or, this doorknob doesn't work very well, or this knife doesn't cut very well. And then you have this idea, I'm going to make a special way to do a knife, and I'm going to call it the ginseng knives. And then, because you see this on TV, these commercials, they'll help you patent it. So you make a phone call to your lawyer friend. Man, I got this $1 billion idea. Call me back. He calls you back, and you're going to be like, dude, I have this idea. I can't tell anybody. Help me patent it before somebody takes it. You then sell this idea. Like, let's call it the ginseng knife. And you sell 1 million units, and you make $5 a unit. And 2 years later or a year later, you have $5 million in your bank account. And you're on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, and boom. That's the story that I've told myself, and I guarantee you, if you think back, you've probably told yourself. The truth is, that's just the media bias. It almost never happens. In fact, you're better off basing your life on just going to Las Vegas or scratching off a lottery ticket to get what you want. Those are bad odds to bet your life on. Sure, people win the lottery every day, but statistically, you're more likely to get hit by lightning. You see, all of us have been taught by people with good intentions, but they had a poisonous effect on our mind and our understanding that it's going to be a lottery ticket. And that's why I get so many people telling me, and you as you're becoming an entrepreneur or whatever it is, whether you're in music, whether it's love, the same thing. People, what does the movie show? You're at the library, you're at Starbucks, You turn to your left. There's the man of your dreams. There's the woman of your dreams. It's like a lottery ticket. You were just living, and then bam, everything works. But you know what the truth is? That's not the truth. That's so rare that to base your life, your love life on that, to base your health on that. You know, health, you see the same thing. You're up late at night. There's an infomercial. It's like, do this crunch roller for 30 days or take this pill. It's, garlic, whatever, or what's the one that you see? Just very fat burners. You see them at the grocery store everywhere. You take a pill. It's like a lottery ticket. And then the next thing you know, you look like the person on the bottle cover. And so we've talked about, those are the three big areas, right? Health, we've been shown it's a lottery ticket. Wealth, it's this idea we have one day. And love, the same thing. And then happiness and fulfillment, it's the same thing. Most people are going, when I get past the grind of life, I'm going to get this job, and then I'm going to feel fulfilled. I don't like the job. I don't like what I'm doing. There's no end game to it. But you know what? My fulfillment, or maybe I'm going to, do something I don't really enjoy. I'm going to structure my life in such a way that I know it's not the things that I really like, but one day the lottery ticket will appear. As I'm doing this, I'll hit the end game. The grind will go away, and magically I will be fulfilled. That's what most people think. Again, we know that's not what makes people happy, but because of media bias, you and I have bought into that. So what we're talking about today, and why this is foundational, is I can give you all these principles from these great thinkers, Peter Drucker, Stephen Hawking. But the problem is, if you don't understand the exponential time frame that the good life comes from, you're going to give up too early. You're going to get discouraged too early. Your expectations are going to be wrong. And like John Calipari, the Kentucky basketball coach who won the NCAA championship not too many years ago, he said, you have to learn to love the grind, because life is the grind. You have to learn that there will never be a day when you achieve optimal health. It's life. During that process, as you're moving through life, you can be moving forward. Even the top bodybuilders in the world, sometimes they're super ripped, like you see on the magazine, and they ebb and flow. You can't always maintain 5% body fat. It's moving up and down, right? So as long as you're more directional focused, which is what I want to talk about, the truth about life is, instead of a lottery ticket, the real approach you should take is what I call the sculpture approach. So what that means is you select a rock, a big black piece of marble, okay? Big rock. And each day you chip away at it. That's the grind. You literally take your little chisel, your hammer, bink. Now sometimes you make a mistake. You got to adjust for it. Maybe you got to glue the piece of rock back on because you chipped off too much, or trying to adjust the sculpture. Let's think what that means in terms of difference. What does that mean practically? Well, that means when it comes to, let's say, wealth creation, the first thing you have to do is pick the rock. And this is the hardest part. And we're going to talk about this in some of the other 67 steps. The rock represents the general industry and the general outcome that you would like to have. So we're going to talk later in one of the other days on your Eulerian destiny, selecting different destinies in the good life. Just to give you an example. Health. That's the first pillar of the good life. Some people are naturally very skinny. One of my brothers, naturally, I think it's called an ectomorph. His body type, naturally lean. He probably is never going to be a big power lifter. He's not going to put on 200 pounds or 100 pounds of raw muscle. He's more of a lean, mean machine. He's built more like a boxer. So my advice to him is, make your end game, make your outcome for your physical health to have this lean, healthy body. Now I have another friend, naturally big, endomorph, tends to be a little bit overweight. I'm like, hey man, you should lift heavy weights, become a power lifter, really bulk up. That's your natural destiny. That's the way that the universe, your genes laid out your path. Of course, you could try to go weight. You could be born really bulky and just run all the time and try to turn into a super skinny person, like a Kenyan Olympic runner. But I think when you pick in your rocks, and we're talking about this later, you want to pick the rock that's this general affinity. As many of you have gotten this great book by Peter F. Drucker, he talks about you can only build upon strength. Let's read this part. He says, most people think they know what they're good at. They're usually wrong. All right. One can not build performance on weakness, let alone on something one cannot do at all. So you got to know your strengths. That's what that rock represents. So with your health, instead of going for the lottery, a little pill, or an 8-week diet you're going to go on, forget diets. Your whole life is going to become an ESS, equilibrium. Sometimes you're super in shape, sometimes you're a little bit out, but it's going to be generally heading towards a direction. The rock represents the direction. So let's say you're a mesomorph, you're not super muscular, naturally super, bulky, and you're not super skinny. Many people, I'm more like a mesomorph. What you want to do, you pick a rock that's like, I'm going to be a healthy mesomorph, meaning I'm going to be somewhat muscular, and I'm going to balance it with somewhat cardio approach and lean approach. And then every day you just chip away at it a little bit. Who cares how long it takes? Like John Calipari said, the grind is life. If you want to get rid of the grind, you're asking to get rid of your life. I recommend that you don't get rid of your life. That is the life. If you can't cope with that, you have other problems that we have to talk about later. So that's health. Picking the rock. Okay? The sculpture. When it comes to wealth, that's the industry you're going to select. And we'll talk about that in another step, how to really select that. But suffice to say, for me, I'm an entrepreneur. That's my rock. And so every day I'm chipping away at it. I'm no longer going, oh, well, this thing's going to unfold rather simply for me. This thing's going to unfold like the media shows me. No, this thing's going to unfold depending on how well I can chip away on the sculpture. Your life must become a sculpture. As Chief Tecumseh says in my favorite poem, love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. And that's for business. I think you can't get better than that. For all areas, love your life, perfect your life. He was really speaking of the perfection that I call the sculpture. When it comes to love, it's the same way. Some people are going to get married early. Some people are going to get married late. Or some people get married never. Pick the sculpture that's your life, that rock that represents your destiny. Some people are naturally introverted. Nothing wrong with that. There's a book, The Power of Introverts. I have it here somewhere. Yet many people who make it are very extroverted. And there's people in between. You find that rock which represents your genetic makeup, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, they talked about this natural disposition that we all have. I call it styles. We'll talk about that later in the PACE system that I developed, PASE, practical, action, social, emotional. You pick that one that represents you. Let's say you're destined to be social, you're driven. If you do the Briggs-Myers, you're driven and recharged by large groups of people. That's your rock. You're going to learn to perfect the sculpture of being in large groups. Go for, like Donald Trump says, think big. Speak in front of big crowds. Have parties at your house with 500 people. If you happen to, the sculpture of your life when it comes to social is more introverted, you pick a small pack of people, small group, highly loyal people, and you go down that. There's no right or wrong. Like I said, the 500-year-old mind would say that one is better than the other, as if there's some black and white. There is no black and white on this. Go down the one that makes sense. It's building upon your strength socially when it gets friends, family, and romance. Some of you are very family oriented. Some of you aren't as much. Oftentimes they say the second or third born in a family is not as, tied to family. And there's nothing wrong with that. As an Amish guy, David Chupp once told me, I said, you're Amish. How do you cope with this world where you stand out? Everyone else is so different from you. And he said, Ty, my dad told me it takes a lot of people to make the world go around. So when you have that approach of going, there's no right or wrong. If I'm somebody who wants to get married at 18, have 10 kids, go down that path, associate with those people, sculpt the life. That's a different sculpture. You'll have to perfect a different set of skills than if you say, you know what, I'm going to be Mother Teresa. I'm going to devote my life to other people and never, never get married. So there's no right, but there is a right or wrong approach to that sculpture, that piece of rock. So obviously, if your sculpture is to be introverted, small group of people, hone those skills much more than large group setting skills, right? And again, fulfillment when it comes to your big picture goals, all those intangibles. Some of you are meant to do world-changing, altruistic things, charitable things, and some people are meant to be Warren Buffett's and Bill Gates, where they're actually almost the opposite. They're capitalists, but then in the end, of course, they do help society, or they do move society forward towards some goal. Now, what's going to make you struggle with this step that we're talking about today? Well, first of all, I alluded to this earlier. News, magazines. One of the reasons I'm so big on books is because I use what's called feedback analysis. I experiment with things and then I look at the results, right? The 7-step method. We'll talk about that in another 67 step. Ask yourself a question. Research. Form a hypothesis. Test. Observe. Analyze. Submit to other smart people. So when I do that with magazines and news, I feel dumber. I feel like my sculpture, I'm getting worse at sculpting down this rock to perfect my life, beautify my life. So my practical advice is the first thing, really go easy on the media, specifically on news, specifically on various TV shows. If you go on my site, in the movies link, I've got movies there that I recommend that will not work against your brain, okay? Now, I love movies. I like TV shows. I think the second thing, because it's not realistic to get rid of all media in your life, unless you're like the Amish. When I lived there for 2.5 years, no electricity, so they'd never have seen TV or movies. I remember I was with the Amish somewhere, and there was a TV on. They'd never seen it. They were like 50 years old, and they were watching it. But my grandma was 96, born in 1918. And she told me when she was growing up, there wasn't a media bias either. She looked up to people like Bach and stuff. There was newspapers, and that's about it. And there was a certain level of intellectual quality that happened at that time. So you can create it now. There's no rules. Like they said about Jeff Bezos, I love this quote. Let me see if I can find it here. This guy was speaking on what he learned from working with Jeff Bezos. And he said, the guy's name was Dalzell. He said, Dalzell watched Amazon from afar and marveled at Bezos. Jeff does a couple things better than anyone I've ever worked for. Number one, he embraces the truth. A lot of people talk about the truth, but they don't engage their decision-making around the best truth at the time. Number two, second thing is that he's not tethered by conventional thinking. What is amazing to me that he's bound only by the laws of physics. He can't change those. Everything else he views as open to discussion. So 2 things there, right? He embraces the truth, and we're saying that the media generally is skewed away from the truth, right? And number 2, he's not conventional. So you don't have to be conventional. I think the average American watches 3 to 4 hours of TV, okay? Control your media. Now, the next thing that I do is when I watch, because I like to just watch movies and a lot of them are stupid, I overtly and explicitly cut a deal with my own brain that when I walk out of that movie, I'll think about it and try to break down all the myths. Because by doing that, it's kind of like, eating junk food and then the next day going on a fast. You kind of cleanse yourself, okay? So I think that just by doing, number one, avoiding the popular stuff in many ways. And when you do watch it, just have a conversation with the group. It's fun. You can break down. You're like, this is all a myth, blah, blah, blah. 3, cut back magazines. I'm publishing a magazine, and I'm going to try to avoid some of the things that I think magazines do. There's another media bias, interesting enough, in this Jeff Bezos Everything Store book that's talked about. And magazines suffer from this. Some books do, but not to the extent. It's called the narrative bias. The narrative bias basically means when you watch a movie or when you read a magazine that's a short article, they tend to just gloss over and just tell you, it seems like just a story, one thing, and then he did this, and she did this, and the next thing you know, they were wealthy, and you start going causation and correlation. Oh, well, this person went horseback riding every day, and this person, got in the gold mining business, or this person opened a hot dog stand, and then they were rich, or then they were happy, and then you're like, that narrative must just be how life goes. The oversimplification of things is what the narrative bias, which is related to the media bias, is, and you want to avoid that. That's why I don't like magazines. They tend to be shorter stories. They tend to have more media and narrative bias in them. So a better book, especially a book that really tells the full story, I find will help you. So go easy on short little magazines. Next one, go easy on things on the internet. Again, the internet has the logical fallacy. You see blog posts, remember what Einstein said? You want things easy, but not easier than they can be, right? You want things simple, but don't oversimplify. Very easy to oversimplify. They call this, causation and correlation is somewhat related. We tend to look at things. Here's an example. A president, George Bush, lived on a ranch, right? So you could say, well, the living on a ranch causes you to be a president. It doesn't. It's a correlation. They're related in his life, but it wasn't a causative factor. So when you see these simple stories, these oversimplified magazine articles, these oversimplified, web memes, little pictures on people's Facebook, these are also ruining the wiring of your brain away from the sculpture mentality. It wasn't, Bill Clinton, Obama, Reagan, they didn't become the president from one thing. It's literally their whole life. You couldn't point to one thing. It was a whole series, a rock that they chipped away. Bill Clinton was born, I think, as a single mom in was it Arkansas, poorest state, one of the poorest states, in a mobile home, worked his way, Rhodes Scholar, boom, boom, boom. It was a series of many grinding it out type good decisions that led to that end game. And you're not probably going to be able to tell that story in 5 minutes, right? So if you read a magazine that's 2 pages, media bias, lottery mentality is going to start getting into your mind. Even the amount of short words is going to make you go, short words, short story, quick path. And you're going to think quick path. And I can't tell you, one thing Drucker talks about that I like is that think of life in 18-month sequences. You never see the 18-month diet, right? But the truth is, physically on your own body, your metabolism has to change. If you've been eating bad, my mom used to say something like, you can't undo 20 years of abusing your body in 20 days. There's a metabolic change that has to happen. Dr. Sharon Molam talks about genetically, your genes will need time to morph and your brain needs time to rewire. So I like to think as a minimum time frame, even for you, even though I say this is 67 days, and I do believe that, because 67 days is the minimum days to begin habits. So we're changing habits here. But then to get the outcome from a change habit, it's not like the world is built around you and I. Let's not be so egocentric that the world's just waiting and going, okay. Oh, Susie started eating right? Reward her. It's been 8 days. Give her a new body. No, it doesn't work that way. Oh, Bob's working hard at work for the last 67 days? Oh, reward him with massive bank account. No. If it took Bill Gates from 12 to 31, he has 160 IQ. Warren Buffett started at 7, made his billion at 57. 50 years later, and it's one of the smartest guys, mentored by Benjamin Graham, one of the smartest teachers, Wharton, wealthiest people in the world taught him. Well, it might take me and you more than 67 days. 67 days, what I want you to focus on here is you're going to form new habits, right? And the new habits are kind of like planting new seeds. So you've been planting a set of seeds that have given you the outcome that you have today, physically, financially, socially, and in terms of your happiness, right? So in 67 days, And that corresponds in this part of the world, or Virginia, where I used to live on a farm. Spring is about 2-3 months. Okay, spring starts in Virginia. You plant your corn, or or you start tilling the soil. Let's say late March, and you're really in spring till late May, right before summer comes. So this 67 days is a new spring of life for you. And it's the time it takes that long to plant those seeds and get them deep enough into your brain that they don't fall out. Remember, your brain is an adaptive machine. It knows that if something comes and goes, it can be ignored. It knows we're going to be bombarded with many ideas. So you need to give your brain enough time to go, no, this is the real you, the new you. And that's what the 67 days is. But then after those 67 days, you're going to need a realistic time frame. That's why I said success is exponential time frame. Now, let's move on to that, what that means. I did a little experiment with one of my employees. I said, if you're, let's say, 27, and another person's 10 years older than you, 37, okay, and you're given $100,000 out of $1 million, and they're giving the other $900,000. All right, you both take your amount of money and you put it in a bank. You put it into your business and you grow your business. And let's say you just do well at business. You're like a Jeff Bezos. It grows at 30% every year, compounding. Remember, the 27-year-old starts with 100 grand. The 37-year-old starts with 900 grand, 9 times more, but they're 10 years older. Every year, they both grow their business. Dunk, dunk, it's growing by 30%. Guess what happens? By 55, 60 years old, the 37-year-old would have $250 million net worth. A lot of money in their bank account. But the person who had had just that little head start and sort of 10 years younger and had 9 times less money has $1 billion or more dollars. You see, you need doublings to happen, cycles of doubling. And if you know the rule of 72, it means you take your interest rate, your return, your ROI, and divide it into 72. So if you're doing 10% on your life improvement in your body, or 10% improvement in your wealth, or 10% improvement on your relationships or your happiness, every 7 years approximately, it'll double. So if you take $10,000, 7 years later, you have 20, which is not much more. But if you get enough cycles of doubling, it goes from 100 grand, in this case at 30%, to $1 billion. And so now this doesn't mean you have to be young or old, because remember, some people waste their youth. Most people waste their youth. So you could be listening to this at 40. You could be listening to this at 4 years old or 80. My point being, there is a natural rhythm that you're not going to be able to break. No matter how many get-rich-quick stories you hear about in the news and in Forbes magazine, most people took a lot of cycles of doubling. Like I said, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Pablo Picasso had the 10 dark years. You know, he painted until he was 80. He started very young. Steven Spielberg, I got invited to a movie that he was a little private showing of his 30th anniversary of Indiana Jones. He spoke there. He was talking about how at 7 years old, he was picking up lenses and making little movies. So again, he had enough cycles of doubling that he became the producer or director that we know him as today. So for yourself, as you get this rock, just understand you need some time. You need some time. Don't let anybody fool you. Don't let the media fool you. Don't let magazine covers fool you. If you want to change your body, just focus on directional paths. Focus on the sculpture. Every day you're chipping away. Like Charlie Munger says, go to bed. Let me see if I can find this full quote here. He says, go to bed a little bit wiser. Let me see if I can find this. Is a great quote here. By the way, I recommend use Evernote is a great way to keep. I use this little application called Evernote. You can sync to your computer and your phone, get a good thought, read something, take a picture of it, or you can write it out. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Discharge your duties faithfully and well. Step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. But you build discipline by preparing for fast spurts. Slug it out 1 inch at a time, day by day. At the end of the day, if you live long enough, most people get what they deserve. Notice the key words here. Step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. You know, the ancient wise teacher said, he who is faithful in a little will be faithful with a lot. It's the same thing, right? Little bit. Every day, go to bed a little wiser. Pick your end goal. Pick the sculpture, the rock you're going to build your sculpture, which is your life. You need 4 of them. The rock of your health physically, the rock of your wealth. Some of you want to be a millionaire. Some of you just want to be financially independent. Some of you want to be billionaires. Whatever that number might be, find the destiny that matches your strengths financially and chip away at it a little bit. There is no lottery ticket. Imagine if you had a friend and he said to you, man, Ty, I got the best idea ever. I'm going to be rich. I'm like, oh yeah, you can be rich? How are you going to do it? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go buy lottery tickets every day. And one day, I'm going to scratch it. I'm going to be rich. It might take me a little while, but eventually, Ty, every day I see somebody winning on the news. Every day, someone somewhere in the world wins. And I'd say to him, but man, the odds. And I would tell him a story, a true story. When I was a little kid, I was like 12. My grandma, or I was younger, I think I was like 10. I was going through the Ralph's grocery store line. And I said, Grandma, let's get one lot. She used to let me get a $1 lottery ticket. And I said, let me get one more lottery ticket. And she was like, okay. And we went back through the line. Got a ticket. I said, I have a good feeling about this, Grandma. So I got this $1 ticket. And sure enough, I scratched it off. I'll never forget. I won $100 right there. They gave you $100 cash. Now remember, this is at a time when I was making $10 a month allowance. So this was like doubling my annual income. I was like, yes, $100. I remember I immediately went out and I bought a bike, a Huffy mountain bike, which interestingly enough, and probably not coincidentally, it was stolen like 3 days later. So easy come, easy go. As the Amish say, a fence that goes up fast falls down fast. And there was a famous French playwright, Moliere, and he said the same thing. I'll read you one of these Moliere quotes. He says, or Moliere, if you want to be more. For those of you who are bourgeois, he has this great quote here. Let's see. The trees that are slow to grow bear the best fruit. The Amish fence that goes up fast falls down fast. So easy come, easy go. I got that bike, $100. Boom, it was gone. So I went home. It was Christmas, and my family didn't have a lot of money, but they said, Ty, we're going to spend $200 on Christmas gifts for you. What do you want? And this was in Transformers. I don't remember what I really wanted, but I had this idea. I was like, I won the lottery once. See, I was returning to my folly. There's a saying, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool returns to his folly. So I'd made $100 by luck, bought a bike, but had nothing to show for it. It was gone. But I was like, let me try this again. Let me beat my head against the wall again. So I said, I just want 200 lottery tickets, $1 scratch. I can still remember this. It was my grandma's house. I showed up. They did what I said. My grandma got me some toys, thank God. So I ended up with some actual Christmas things. But my parents got me 200 tickets. I remember they folded out. I folded out like this, and I scratched them off one by one. And I was like, I had it all figured out. I was like, well, if 1 out of 10 of them wins $100, that's 20 tickets that win $100. I'll have $2,000. I can buy 5 bikes, 10 bikes, 20 bikes. So I remember scratching them off, excited at first, slowly a little bit less excited. I made $15 at the end. 15 of those tickets won $1 or $2 or whatever the amount was. And that's when it hit me. This is not a good way to get what I want out of life. And that's the last time I ever bought a lottery ticket. Yet, so many of us, this might be your life if you think back honestly. This might be my life at times. Oh, there was a time where I've predicated my whole life, my whole rare existence. We're not going to be here very long. I've predicated my existence on that same lottery mentality. I want you to commit to do one thing. Knock it off. Stop. Stop looking for a diet. Stop looking for supplement pills. Sure, supplements help at times. They're done right. Get someone smart, doctor, whoever knows what they're talking about to advise you. But why don't you just try this? Just for a little while, don't use any supplements to try to get more lean. Try old-fashioned chipping away at your body. Cut the junk calories. Eat a balanced diet. If you're really overweight, get some energy imbalance. Eat less than your body burns. And lo and behold, people say you won't get skinny. I'm like, you ever seen somebody who was a POW in a war camp? They're all skinny. I don't care what body type you start with. If you don't eat too much food, you will lose weight. I was reading a cool story in The Story of the Human Body by the Harvard professor Lieberman. Now, if you're listening to this, don't take this as advice because I'm no doctor. But I'll just tell you what he said. They did experiment on all these diabetics. I think it was type 2, which is usually induced from lifestyle. They just put them on a 400 or 600 calorie a day diet, which is severely limited. It's like 2 sandwiches in a day. And then they exercised them, and the diabetes 2 symptoms disappeared. So if you're overweight, try the lottery approach. Now, I would not suggest something that aggressive because try the sculpture way. I would not try something too aggressive either because that's not an equilibrium. That's more of a lottery approach. I'm going to starve myself for 2 weeks and lose weight. The point being there that I brought that up is that you can take control of pretty much what you have, do it well, make war with a multitude of counselors, body, chip away at that goal, try an 18-month goal, right? I guarantee you can revolutionize your health in 18 months. But you can't do it if you're thinking like the media, if you're thinking like the 8-week diet. They're trying to sell you something. Remember my favorite saying? If you're in a room and you don't know who the sucker is, you're the sucker. You never want to be the sucker. When it comes to wealth, same thing. I did an interview today with Big Brown, UFC heavyweight contender, one of the top UFC fighters. And I said, what's your biggest regret? And he said, man, just going with an unrealistic time frame. He said, you got to grind it out. He didn't know this talk that I'm giving you, but it's precisely, and he's a champion. Top football player, top pro athlete, same thing, pattern, over and over. You're going to refine this sucker down. Michael Jordan was the same. Everybody who makes it's the same. So that's what I want you to do. When it comes to other areas of your life, for example, when it comes to social, same thing. People are like, I'm lonely, I'm single. I don't like my relationship with my wife or my husband, my kid. Everything's in shambles. Set a longer goal. Chip away at it step by step, slowly, with no quick fixes. No, not looking for any quick fix. There's no quick fix on a stone that you're sculpting. There's none. You don't quickly chop it in half and then paste it back together. It's a rock. That means you got to be careful and slowly do it. But each day, as Munger says, discharge your duties faithfully and well. Step by step, you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. But you build the discipline to prosper from these fast spurts, because it will come. You'll get some fast spurts. Body, wealth, socially, you'll get some big breaks, and then you'll hit a new plateau that you kind of are flat on, and then you go up again, step by step. And then fulfillment, it's the same way. If you read Jonathan Haidt, I don't know where his book is, Happiness Hypothesis. I was talking to him on the phone. NYU professor did 3 TED Talks. Same thing. He talks about that happiness is not something you get. It's the fruition of multitude of factors that you're doing well. TED Talks, I did a TED Talk, and the only thing I don't like about TED Talks is they're like 18 minutes, which is great, and I understand, and I'm not critiquing that. But there is a danger in too shallow and oversimplistic of a narrative type fallacy, a media fallacy, that we can get all the answers in 18 minutes. Now, I know that's not their goal, but just go with me here for a second. Be careful. Watch some things on YouTube. I've been watching Will Durant did an audio series you can get on YouTube on history, and they're like hours worth of stuff. Go deeper. Remember that book, The Shallows, I talked about, how the internet is rewiring our brain to think very shallowly. Let's get this out of our mentality. So here's the question for you. I want you to write this out, a shorter answer here on the page. That's going to complete and mark this so that you can get the next lesson released. Then I want you to print out the worksheet, okay? Or if for some reason you don't see the worksheet, you can just write it on a piece of paper, put it in your 3-ring binder, pen and paper, old school, blending new school and old school. We want both. That's going to go on your bookshelf. It's going to be your 67 steps journal. Get you what you want. The question I want to ask you, I want you to answer. Be honest with this. What is the number one area you have taken a lottery approach? Specifically, talk about whether it be your body, finances, social life, happiness. Where have you taken or tried to approach it with this quick approach? Okay. And what the result was, number 2. And the new approach specifically. Be specific. Talk about a diet you tried. Talk about a business you started. Talk about a date or romance you had. Talk about, approach to happiness that you had. I'm just going to meditate. No, suddenly I'm going to be happy. Right? Wouldn't it be nice? That's the narrative fallacy. People want to sell you books like that, but that's not the truth. It's a soup of life that we're trying to mix together. You want good chicken soup? It can't just be chicken, can't just be broth, can't just be celery, can't just be salt. It needs to be a blend, perfectly blended together to suit your specific constitution, as Sigmund Freud says in chapter 2 of Civilization is Discontents. Each of us has different and varying constitutions. So pick one. Write about it briefly here on the page. A couple sentences. Okay, that'll activate the social side. Read some of the other people's. You'll get some ideas that will remind you things you forgot about. Blind sides, weaknesses that we all have in ourselves. And then print this off and get some good answers for yourself that you're going to keep to yourself privately, okay? Or you can share them with me by sending them in to me, all right? So thanks so much. The 3 things. Do this. If you need to listen to this again, come back again. This is important stuff. The time frame, the exponential time frame. Love your life, perfect your life, beautify it, all things in your life. Perfect it step by step. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.